Hello, and welcome to Coping with Donald. I am Phil. So much has happened in the past few weeks, and I gotta be honest, I was going through one of my mental gyrations that make me totally unable to turn the camera on. But I finally got it on, and so much has happened. I mean, I'm gonna leave it to everybody else to cover the whole bombing raid that was on a private app that or a public app that was sent to a journalist. They had him in the chat. Everybody's covering that so much. Everybody's covering a lot of the main stories. I just want to bring up a couple of other things that so many things slip under the radar while the big things are happening. J.D. Vance. Actually, Usha Vance. Usha, which, by the way, God, I think she's a very attractive woman, and I don't know why she's married to J.D. Vance. Okay? Unless she, really wants to be First Lady or something. But at this point, man, or woman, take the kids and run. He obviously, you look at the way he gets mad at people who are, say, Indian, okay, or any other minority. You got to get away from that guy, okay? But anyway, that's my opinion. Usha, call me. How do they do it? Call me. Anyway, I'm not going to wait for the call. Usha wanted to go to Greenland and watch some sort of a dog sled race or something. She had talked about it with her kids. They all thought it would be a great idea. And then, so there were some places in Greenland said, fine, we'd be so proud to have you come by and visit us, the wife of the vice president. And then JD decided to come along. And when JD decided to come along, no one wanted him there. Okay? Now, as Donald Trump, you got to look at that and say, boy, I got to cope with this. He must have been pissed off. So at least he can get pissed off once in a while. But J.D. Vance did wind up going to Greenland with Usha. He ruined her time because they didn't go to the dog race. They just went to a U.S. military base on Greenland. And so she had to settle for that, which I'm sure was not what she wanted at all. That is the kind of thing that if I were married to somebody, they would resent me forever and ever. But, anyway, Vance gave a speech, and, it was his typical, you should thank us, finger wagging, you're a bad boy kind of speech about basically Denmark not taking care of Greenland. He said he's very worried because China and Russia are using the Arctic shipping lanes. So they're worried about Greenland. They're so worried that they want the newly fascist U.S. to take over Greenland. Donald Trump has been saying not, it's in our best interest. He's been saying we will annex Greenland. We will take over Greenland because it's good for us. Which, to me, sounds more threatening than anything coming out of China. But that's just me. So, I was hoping, if it was like a Grimm's fairy tale and JD started with the, you should thank us, some creature in the fairy tale would bite his finger off. And it's almost like he comes across as so scolding. He should be like the chairman of scolding, COS, or the scolding chairman operator, SCO, SCO. J.D. Vance is one of the many frightening people that has control over our lives right now. Next up, there was a report in Georgia, in a place called Tipton, Georgia. A 24-year-old woman miscarried. And I think doctors or authorities have come out and said, yes, it was a miscarriage. There wasn't any self-induced miscarriage. It was just a plain old miscarriage. The woman put her fetus in a bag and was putting it in a dumpster, and she got found, and she was bleeding terribly. She got taken to the hospital, and she got arrested. 24 years old. She was arrested for concealing the death of a person. There's an argument there. Was it a fetus or was it a person? And abandoning a body. Again, was it a fetus body or a person body? But the point I want to bring up is that women are afraid to go to hospitals when this happens, because when they go to hospitals, they might get turned into the authorities, etc., etc. And she didn't want to get on the radar. This is what the kind of choices that women are forced to make nowadays when they have miscarriages or don't want to have the baby, but if they just have miscarriages, now what do I do? She actually is arrested on those charges for a person who did not have a name or a social security number or a fully developed body. It was a fetus. All right. This is the consequence. I guess I am going to talk about Trump. This is the consequence of the Trump Supreme Court justices and the kind of rules they put on women who, I don't see how they can call this freedom, but that's what they do. Finally, consumer confidence took a plunge on Friday, and that was one of the reasons why the stock market revisited recent lows. The stock market really went down. The SPY was down 2% and then fell further in the after hours. And the Nasdaq was down 3% and fell further in the after hours. Now, come Monday, this could just turn around and go up. Who knows what investors are thinking. But that was some pretty damning news. It was very low. As a matter of fact, there was a time in 2022, for about 3 months, maybe 4 months, where it was actually lower in 2022, because that was the raging inflation time and cereal was going up to $8 a box, which I still can't believe. And the time they had to go to before to see consumer confidence this low is the month that Trump left office. When Biden came in, consumer confidence went up. But when Trump was in there, it was low, and now it's low again. And for very good reasons. All these problems that are happening with the economy are centered around three things. Number one, the Elon firings that are having the spin-off effects of those people not buying certain items. Say just even lunch at work. And those people suffering and then making less money, and it's just a downward spiral of people making less money and not being able to spend in the economy. Plus, people are afraid because they see what's happening and they don't know how long they'll have their jobs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is obviously the tariffs, which would push prices up. So people usually worry about things more before they happen. So maybe the tariffs won't affect prices that badly. We'll see. And finally, the capture and sometimes brutal treatment of the people that are being sent to El Salvador prisons, even though they may not have done anything illegal, or may even be U.S. citizens. They're just shoving them out as fast as they can. Well, if not U.S. citizens, then having protections of certain immigration rules, like the temporary protective status, which even now people from Cuba are losing, and they're going to be returned to Cuba. I wonder what Ronald Reagan would think about that. So those things are a Trump-caused problem that is affecting the economy. Will it be a permanent effect on the economy? We don't know. Will it last for 4 years? We don't know. Will we last for 4 years? We don't know. But it is definitely a problem. And also, I just got to say, first of all, before I do this last thing, this is about a stock called Gamestop. And no, I didn't buy it or sell it this week. It is a set of stores in malls. They sell and rent video games and equipment. And the guy who runs GameStop, he ran it a while, years ago, and now he's back, and he wants to buy Bitcoin. Now, I am not a fan of Bitcoin, but if this guy wants to buy Bitcoin, maybe he should do it with his own money and not company money. So GameStop, because as an investor, if you're just going to worry, if you have a lot of shares of, I'm just going to pick a company. Meta, Facebook. If you have a lot of shares of that company, you're going to worry about their advertising rates and are they losing advertisers, et cetera, et cetera. If they start like hoarding Bitcoin as part of a company strategy, you also have to worry about Bitcoin going up or down, especially with a smaller company called GameStop, which doesn't really have great financial positions. They came out with earnings. The earnings were okay. I mean, you know, what were expected. And they came out saying they're going to start hoarding Bitcoin. That way, Bitcoin lovers were like, woohoo, this is great. And they poured into the stock. They sent the stock from roughly, we're going to deal with rough numbers here, $25 to $29, $30 that night when they reported the earnings. In the aftermarket, the next day, it dropped back down to maybe 26, 27, and then Bitcoin announced that they were going to put out an offering of $1.5 billion to raise money in senior notes, meaning they're borrowing money from the public or from banks. And what that does is if you own a share of GameStop, you all of a sudden, you're going to, any company that does that is diluting their existing shares. And what that means is your value per share is going to go down because there's more shares out there. So to equal the amount of dollars that the company is perceived to be worth, if you put out more shares, they have to be a lower price to come out equal. Plus, I don't think people really like that strategy, and they sent GameStop down to 21. Now, you're talking about, I think it was 18 at one point, but let's just say $30 to $20 for round numbers. That's a third of your value. If you had $30,000 of GameStop stock that you bought when it was $29, $30 after earnings, if you had $30,000, it's now worth $20,000. You've lost $10,000. This company did not come out and just all of a sudden say, hey, we have a new policy. They could have announced this at the same time as the night before. But in addition to not wanting to base a company on alternate currency, they knew that that would depress the price. Who do you think was selling when it got up to $30? People in the know. Whether they be bankers or GameStop employees. People in the know were selling. They sold at $30, let other people buy it, and take this drop down so that they can borrow money through GameStop to put into Bitcoin. They let the public buy an overpriced Bitcoin, maybe 40% overpriced, not Bitcoin, I'm sorry, an overpriced GameStop share, and then pulled the rug out on them. And there's nothing illegal about that. So when you buy stocks, keep in mind basically the integrity of the company as well. And if you have young hotshots running the company, just remember that they can get that company in big trouble. Remember Martin Shkreli, when I probably said his name wrong, he bought a company and immediately raised prices 5 and 10 times. Oh, I'm sorry, he became CEO of a company, raised the prices of the drugs 10 times and walked around like he was a big success. He was like 30 years old. Okay? Young, ambitious people can sometimes be very corrupt. And we'll just leave it at that. I guess that brings us back to J.D. Vance. Be careful when you buy stocks, because sometimes they do things on purpose, knowing you'll lose, they'll win. It's scary as hell, really. Probably best to stick with index funds like SPY, which tracks the overall market, and it's down, say, 7% in the past month and a half. I don't know if Trump will ever do anything to boost the stock market. He could raise it 10% tomorrow. All he had to do is say, this tariff thing, I don't like it. Instead, he talks about Liberation Day, okay? So just be very careful. If you can, I will tell you of a really good site. It's called Trade Brigade, okay? And every morning they come on, they put up charts, not just for indexes, funds, but for certain big companies like NVIDIA and like Meta and Netflix and things like that. They tell you what the charts are telling them, and they give several outcomes as to what can happen during the day. I know it's helped me. It's called Trade Brigade. You can get it on YouTube. All right? This one ran a little bit long, and I'm sorry. Have a good day. Have a good day, and let's hope that our government doesn't hurt us too much this week.